as a public hearing. It is a public feedback information session, although basically we're conforming with the same behavior and process. And so again, we have 4 speakers. We have a number of submissions that have been sent in, and again, asking how we best manage these. We've suggested that we have them read into the record.
The public feedback session is not as onerous as the public hearings.
Right, so do we need to read them into the record?
No, we don't. It's more a summary is important on those
Right.
At the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, we'll avoid that delay then, and I'm assuming that some of the people who have written these submissions will also be here today and speak to their concerns. I guess that moves us quickly then to the speaker sign-in sheet. Mr. Nigel Edward James is our first speaker, and welcome, Mr. James.
Thank you, Worship.
Your Worship,
You're on.
sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I was informed that I would be first up. Did I need to sign a sheet?
The proponent, Nigel, would you
By all
mind?
means, yes.
Thank you, Nigel.
Doing that? Yeah, that seems like a reasonable process. I'm sorry that I didn't make that option available.
You're on. Oh, yeah, when it's ready, it's on.
On now, that is on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having us here today. Your Worship, Mayor Taylor, and members of council, my name is Jim Kennedy. I live at 1516 Kerfoot Road, White Rock, BC. I'm here on behalf of Weeds, Glass and Gifts to request that you consider approving the development variance permit for 7500 Donaldson Drive. The City of Grand Forks determined a variance was necessary. According to an email from Lee Ford Lafayette with Development and Engineering on Monday, April 29, 2019, Weed's application for a retail cannabis store at 7500 Donaldson Drive is within 100 meters of James Donaldson Park, and I quote, "Council rejected the last application that did not meet the setback distance requirement from a community use zone and from a youth-centered facilities." Weeds, Glass and Gifts definitely want to be a part of this community, and we feel that our store absolutely meets the objectives of the City of Grand Forks, both as it relates to retail cannabis and as a part of a complete community. Through our research of the city's bylaws, we found that a strict application of retail cannabis zoning bylaws would render a majority of the city impermissible for cannabis stores to operate within, as the 100-meter buffer surrounding community use zones renders nearly all of the core commercial zone impermissible for cannabis stores. As well, the 100-meter buffer surrounding community use zones present throughout the city renders a number of areas throughout the city impermissible for cannabis stores. This impermissibility is aggravated further by Section 46 of the Consolidated Zoning Bylaws, 2039, 2039-A1, and 2039-A3, where cannabis stores are not listed expressly as a permitted use under Section 46.2, Neighborhood Commercial Zone. As stated during the City Council meeting on May 15th, 2017, there are many elderly individuals and those with medical conditions that rely on cannabis to alleviate their symptoms. These bylaws will restrict rather than provide reasonable access, which is contrary to the intention of council to provide reasonable access to the constituents of the City of Grand Forks, whether it is for medical or recreational purposes, and is further contrary to the intention of City Council to provide more equitable access to the cannabis retail market. So accordingly, to achieve these objectives, the city really must allow variances to be permitted. Well, we get it. Although these laws are restrictive, we understand that it allows the city and its constituents to have a say in who plants their cannabis store in your fair city and where. Applicants in their store location should be good for Grand Forks. There should be no increased risk to youth. I would suggest that weeds is good for Grand Forks. The proprietors have a long track record. They are good people with good business practices that focus on the community as well, not just profit. They care about people. They have operated over 30 stores across Canada without a single incident of youth exposure, with little external oversight. They are a good corporate citizen, having paid taxes since their first store opened over 6 years ago, and in 2016, they passed a GST audit. Weeds also, and this is an example of how they do maintain quite a serious and rigid oversight on underage exposure. They operated for several years a medical cannabis dispensary on Main Street in Vancouver for a number of years. And that store is within 60 meters of Sunset Community Center. There was not a single incident of youth exposure during that time. Any concerns of the city in allowing the development of Variance can further be alleviated by the site-specific circumstances. The building stands alone on a large lot, and the front door is towards the far side of the building that faces the entrance to James Donaldson Park. Strict ID checking policies and robust security systems will be implemented to ensure the safety of the youth and the community. Further, with the province now the overseer of store operations in the non-medical cannabis retail field, it adds a further layer of security to ensure that the store is operating in a way that further reduces risk of youth exposure. Before opening, the province will ensure systems and processes are in place and functioning properly, and after opening, they will regularly inspect. Regarding the city's implication that James Donaldson Park is a youth-centered facility, although the premises are located within 100 meters of a community use zone, the specific use for James Donaldson Park, in which it is 100 meters within, is not a youth-centered facility, as defined in zoning bylaw 2039-A1. The James Donaldson Baseball Park is not attended and primarily used by minors. Use by youth is merely incidental to the overall use of the baseball park as public recreational space. It also annually hosts Cannabis, which is an adult-focused event. Even if the baseball park was used mostly by minors, which it is not, the mechanisms that the applicant will be placing on the premises will ensure that the youth exposure to cannabis will be eliminated. Finally, I'd like to say a few words about the warming center that is temporarily occupied 7500 Donaldson Drive. And I add that it is temporary at this juncture. The proprietor of Weeds Glass and Gifts, Don Briere, truly felt he was providing something of value to the community when he agreed to allow the warming center to occupy the premises during the winter. When it became apparent that the licensing from the province was likely several months down the road, he continued to support their requests for extension. I have to say that he was truly unaware of the issues in the community until I attended the meeting on June 10th. We want to reiterate that although we are supportive of the warming center, and I'm speaking of Weeds and Don Briere, this was to be a temporary arrangement from the beginning. The original lease agreement ended March 31st, and we've been extending month to month in response to requests from Whispers of Hope. Last week, I contacted Whispers of Hope Board Chair Dwayne Foster. We had a good conversation, and he agreed to table the need for a transition plan out of the premises at the Whispers of Hope Board of Directors meeting on the evening of June 19th. The idea is that they will transition out of 7500 Donaldson as soon as possible, but within a time frame that allows a reasonable transition of the warming center. I believe that the timing also complicated the situation. With a new board taking over only a few weeks ago and having to basically deal with the issues that were existing in the warming center. Although we asked for a plan in advance of this meeting, so we could give you more concrete information, we can assume that a plan is indeed forthcoming to move the warming center to another location, although it may take a little while because they do not as of yet have another location. We believe that improving our request for the variance, the community will receive a number of benefits. First, Weeds will be providing a community use service that contributes to the community members' well-being. There will be more choice and more convenient accessibility for constituents who are elderly and those with medical conditions who rely on cannabis to alleviate their symptoms but don't necessarily have the mobility to move them around any great distances. In essence, the applicant will provide products that contribute to personal care and is a health activity, as provided for in the definition of the community use service in your bylaws. Second, you have an applicant who is socially responsible, and its operation will benefit the community at large, as they have countless customers from stores in other municipalities who have attested to the excellent quality of products they carry, the professionalism of the staff, and the knowledge and courtesy as well, and the general cleanliness of the store both within and surrounding. Weeds are good corporate and community-minded citizens. Third, the applicant will employ staff members from the community and provide them with wages well above the minimum wage in BC, along with health and dental benefits. Third, the applicant will employ staff members. Excuse me, I just read that one. Fourth, the city has an opportunity to welcome the business of a pioneer and a stalwart in the cannabis industry. It is through the efforts of people like Don and his partner Carol that we now see a legal framework for cannabis. Weeds will continue to work within the regulatory framework to continue to drive positive change. Now, if we are not approved for the development variance, I believe that there will be a lost opportunity in this city to attract a family-run business with a long track record of being good for the community and helping others, and promoting and adhering to high standards in the industry. Second, strict application of the aforementioned bylaws won't achieve Council's intention to provide reasonable access to cannabis for its constituents, nor more equitable access to the cannabis retail market. Rather, they will make cannabis retail largely impermissible in the city. Third, you will choose to leave a commercial building vacant until another business can be found to lease the premises, which would increase the overall commercial property vacancies within the city. So that building will either be put up for sale or leased, depending on what the scenario is that comes forward. And we can also expect that if we do not get the variance, that that the warming center will actually have a place to stay for as long as they need to until they do find another location. And finally, you have lost the potential for 5 to 6 full and part-time jobs that pay above minimum wage and benefits in this city. In conclusion, we request that this council for the city of Grand Forks, first of all, recognize that having a legal retail cannabis store licensed by the province and the municipality within 100 meters of James Donaldson Park will not increase youth exposure to cannabis, because Weeds Glass and Gifts Limited is a conscientious company and will be held to our own high standards, along with those driven by provincial policy and regulations. And that ultimately you give consideration to the benefits Weeds will bring to the community and approve the development variance permit for 7,500 Donaldson Drive. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter, your worship, councillors, citizens of Grand Forks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I think there was one comment in there that I might comment on, which was that if you do not get the variance that you're looking for, or the permission or support you're looking for, that Weeds would allow Whispers to continue to operate in that location?
Yes, we would, unless they are able to find another place in the meantime.
Right, so, okay, thank you for clarifying that. We had a counselor and then a lady in the back there. Oh, it's that lady. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize.
Turn off your mic.
Okay, first of all, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a couple of questions. Is this property on 7500 Donaldson Drive the only property that Mr. Briere owns in the city?
He actually doesn't own that property. I'm sorry. Yeah, he actually doesn't own that property. His son does, Devin Briere. He's sitting right there.
Okay.
So he owns 2 properties in this town.
You
Devin
do?
does, yeah.
Okay. What are the 2 properties?
The one is 7500 Donaldson Drive, and the other one is 317 Market Avenue.
So is it intended?
Councillor Thompson, are we getting into anything related
No, I
to
just
debate?
want to get some clarification on some things.
Okay.
Okay. So is it intended to not only sell but perhaps produce edibles at any of those, either of those locations?
Edibles will be sold once they become legal, under the legal policy and regulatory framework
Thank you.
within the provincial government.
Can I ask if it's what they're going to manufacture?
I guess you could ask if they're going to manufacture them. yeah.
Is it your intention to manufacture the edibles at one of the 2 locations?
No, that is not the intent.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. And, Pamela Kennedy?
Hello, Jim. Right?
Hi.
Correct? Jim Kennedy. My name is Pamela Kennedy. Anyways, beginning of your read, you were stating that Don Bier, is that right? Okay. That he was unaware of what was happening at the warming center to date until June 19th or 10th meeting that you attended, and that the way you were reading it sounded like you were reflecting that this rezoning would alleviate that concern in the community. But then, almost on your last page, you turn around and you say, if you don't get the rezoning, you're going to allow for the warming center as is to continue to operate. Is that a noose around my neck? I live directly across.
Information only.
Okay, no, information only, or is that a question?
I think
Sorry, Brian.
That's a leading question in terms of debating whether or not it's a noose around your neck or not.
Okay, sorry,
I think the
stand
clarity of it
corrected.
is what you said.
I am a property owner adjacent to the warming center. I highly agree that the warming center is needed in this town for what they offer. How it's ran, it's very questioned by me. Now, you're just saying that the owner of the building understands or has heard the concerns of the community. But if you don't get the rezoning changed, that they're going to allow the same situation to continue in this town
Okay.
as is?
Kennedy, I think that clearly states where Mr. Kennedy's position is. However, at this point in time, I caution that I think it's, Jim, that you've really tied yourself into the warming center issue here, and I would suggest we go ahead with our speaker list and then open it up. But I think we have to watch this doesn't turn into a warming center debate, because in fact I would have certainly cautioned you not to tie the 2 things together as you've done here in your presentation. We do have a speakers list, and I'd like to go on with that, ladies and gentlemen, before we move forward.
Your Worship, could I just ask you a question? There's really no protocol laid out for what I didn't understand that there would be questions directed to the speakers. Is that part of the protocol of the meeting?
You know,
or no?
as a public information hearing, we're not here to debate, and that's where I'm drawing the line. I
Right.
think getting the facts out, clarifications from Councillor Thompson was factual. I think clarification from Pamela was factual. In fact, that is the position of the company. So if we go on with the speakers now, I think that at the end, I'll see if we can tie this up with any last-minute information issues without getting into debate.
What I was alluding to, it's not a question period, and that's basically what was transitioning here into the meeting, a
Right,
questioning
and
period.
I'm sorry, I was letting that go for the sake of getting more information on this.
So we've clarified that, then it won't be a questioning period?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Okay, and now if we could go on with the speakers that have signed up, and thank you very much, Mr. James. Thanks, Mr. Kennedy and Mr. James, for giving up your seat. That was rude of me not to let the proponent speak first, so you're on.
The big one. The big button, the
Big
gray
button.
one. Yep.
The gray one.
Gray one. There you go.
Trainable.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Nigel James and I'm a resident of Grand Forks. My comments are not concerning really what goes on in the building, but I looked at the distance and I was a bit peculiar, but thought, well, is that reasonable or reasonably accurate? I took my trusty measure tape out and measured it, and in fact the distance is correct from the building to the entrance gates of Lansdowne Park, within a few centimetres. But it was quoted actually in the document some time ago that it was to the property boundary. In fact, the property boundary, I believe it is about 4.4 metres incorrect, so therefore it is somewhat closer. However, it is still 30 odd metres away, and that's purely on that side of it. The other item that in the bylaw, there is, I can't remember what it said and which bylaw it was, but where residents live, and it might be a special residence, but then the residents actually live closer than Donaldson Park to the warming centre. The question, I have one question in general terms of the 100 metres, is that laid down by the federal government?
No, that's not. That's our own
I see.
bylaw locally.
In that case, it's purely a matter of saying it's about 30%. Yes, it's only 30% of your 100 metres, which is rather a big difference. Thank you very much. Your
Thank
Worship.
you, Mr. James. And our next speaker is Bernie Barkowski. Good afternoon, Bernie.
My name's Brian Barkowski. I live at Pineview Crescent, and I'm sorry I'm not used to all this kind of fancy talk to worship and all this kind of stuff. I'm just a tobacco operator for 38 years.
It's traditional.
So can I just talk freely
No, we'll
without...
talk, yeah.
First of all, I just don't understand how somebody, the municipality and the council can decide to change the distance between a pot house store to the rec center, the baseball park, the residents that live right across the street. I don't think that they should be able to change the bylaw to suit one person that owns that building, that wants to change it into a pot store. You already have two, as far as I understand, pot stores in this town. Do we really need a third? You all, as council members, have, I'm pretty sure, taken an oath when you became council members to protect the people of this town and not an individual that wants to do something and change the bylaws to suit them. But anyway, that's pretty well all that I can say, is that you guys are supposed to be here for the members of this city, not to suit one person, and to do what you want to do is change the bylaw just to suit that person.
Thank you
And
very
like I
much.
say, I don't agree with the bylaw changing, having another pot house. You don't need it. You don't need any of them. This is a small town. You don't even have the police force here to protect the ordinary citizens, never mind a pot house and what goes on in those places, and the warming place. Thank you.
Thank you very clarifying. We have a clarification from Councillor Zelinski.
So unfortunately, I can't use my mic with that one on, but please know that this is a process. This is us doing due diligence with our planning bylaws. So, so this is a right, anybody's right to ask for a change. He's not being dealt with any different than anybody else. We're just going through a process on how we change our bylaws. So please understand, this is just part of the way we do business. It's nothing else.
Thank you. And our next, Sharon Tusenberg? Tornberg.
Sharon Tornberg.
Welcome,
New to
Sharon.
Grand Forks.
You knew from
Big
where?
green button.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, Sharon Tornberg. I live in Balmar. I'm new to Grand Forks. I've only been here 7 months, and I have to say I'm very disappointed in this pot shops that are going up, the ones that are open if they're already open, and this one you are planning. We totally, my husband and I, disagree with this. The pot shops do nothing for our community. They do nothing for our youth, and that is crap about jobs.
Yes.
We need honest companies. Tim Hortons, what happened to that? They would provide jobs, safe jobs. That baseball park is used by children, sir,
Yes.
not adults. That's not an adult baseball park, that is a family park. I don't want it in my town. Not now, not ever.
Thank you, Sharon.
I can't talk anymore. That's fucking bullshit. That's bullshit.
Okay, and our last speaker is Greg Snyder.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Greg?
My wife and I moved here a couple of years ago. I don't want to use the mic. Can everybody hear me? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm a retired teacher and I moved, pardon me?
I don't know if the audience in the.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Put up your hand if you can't hear me.
The
Thank
camera
you.
we're worried about.
Thank you. I retired here 2 years ago from the Okanagan after being a teacher there for many years. My first career was in business. I helped set up Costco in Canada when they first opened, or before they opened actually. But the last 20 years when I was teaching, I had a lot to do with youth and students in the Okanagan Valley, and I cherished them a lot. And I don't believe for a minute that the pot shop location, regardless of a bylaw right now, would be in the proper location in the building that has been purchased prior to having a bylaw change, with the expectation that it should be changed, and not only that, with the expectation that I believe what I heard was almost in a way a veiled threat that if the pot shop doesn't go ahead, then maybe we should leave it as a warming center, when this warming center originally was supposed to be termed as a temporary thing anyway. It's got nothing to do with warming right now with this temperature anyway. But regardless, back to the original issue, I knew a lot of kids. Some of them had issues with drugs, whatever they were. Marijuana, although Trudeau and the government of Canada decided to legalize it, nothing we can do about that at this point. However, it does affect the youth of our community. I see it firsthand. I saw it firsthand a lot of times in my school. I had a kid come in there and his attitude changed overnight. This was one example of many. That kid sat at his desk and did absolutely nothing. phoned his mom up, and I said, Mom, what's going on here? Oh, she says, he's living with his dad. You know, I bet you I know what it is. He's smoking pot. Well, guess what? Mom had him changed around, and by the end of that week, and I'm telling you the honest to God truth, the kid was turned back into the same energetic young fellow that he used to be. Now, without belaboring the point, we have 3 schools in our neighborhood, and they're not that far away. And I have talked directly with some teachers who couldn't be here today, disappointed by the way that this meeting, this hearing couldn't be held at a time when more people at work couldn't attend it.
Absolutely.
And it's wrong for council to do this meeting right now. It should be well informed to the people with kids, because I know a lot of them feel the same way, and I've spoke with them. So bottom line is that personally, I, along with my wife, neighbors and friends, and I canvassed the area because I live not too far from that neighborhood, I did not meet a single person that really said, yes, we should have a pot shop in this location. So, as a taxpayer, and God knows we pay enough taxes, they just went up a lot this year, I have a stake along with a lot of other taxpayers, and I am vehemently opposed, and also my wife is, and I do have a lot of friends and neighbors feel the same way. And I actually went out and council, I went honestly, talked to people. One of them was somebody taking something out of the little lock up there where the little the storage units are, right across from the station pub. And that person didn't know him from Adam. He feels exactly the same way. And I said, we've got to get support out here to the community to make ourselves heard. Because pot shop or having the warming center there without proper license, etc., and proper support from the province and enough money to see it through is totally wrong. Okay? In addition, the one last thing I'd like to comment is this goodness out of the heart of the owners of the property there. I understand Whispers of Hope are paying them 50-some thousand a month. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I believe they're paying them rent for those premises. And the warming center should be placed in another location and also have more support from the provincial and perhaps the municipality when it comes to counseling, support. I know personally that I've talked to a person who stayed there, and it is a drug house, legal or illegal.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
We're getting way off topic, Mr.
Okay.
Snyder.
No, we're not.
This public hearing is
No,
not
we're
to
not.
do.
No, we're not off topic.
No,
We are
we're
not.
on topic.
We are
Thank you.
on topic.
We're
Thank
on
you.
topic. Keep going. We're
Thank
on
you.
topic.
Excuse me.
Okay, I'm
I will
done.
call
Thank
this
you.
to a close if you don't sit down, sir.
I will.
Thank you. Okay. That's very poor public behavior. Right?
So it's a warming center.
And I have to say that this has basically devolved into a discussion of whether or not we should have pot shops in this town.
Well, we should
or
have
whether or
that
not we should have a
conversation.
warming center. And again, this is not the hearing for that. However, I do, at this point in time, have to say that, Mr. Kennedy, you did open yourself up for this with the comments you made. And so I'm not going to continue on with this any longer. Pamela, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to continue this because the group is not, at this point in time, following the rules of a public hearing.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, sir, your worship. I think council now knows how a lot of people feel in this town. Thank
Okay, and
you.
I'm sorry it had to come out at this point with this situation, but I do hear what you're saying, that there's still a lot of people out there who don't want cannabis in this community and don't want the warming center. I'm hearing you very clearly.
Thank you. As one of your counselors said, this is a place to expose things like that. I apologize for maybe becoming too emotional, but it is an emotional thing.
It's the fact that we've jammed it into this public hearing about the cannabis licensing of this shop, and I think we need to talk about this ourselves in terms of having another forum for people to speak their mind like this.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if
Okay,
we
when-
could do
when-
that
when do we
before
have
you
that
make
then?
decisions.
Let's let council talk about this in terms of what we might do in terms of dealing with this portion of the community that wants to speak out on these issues.
Yeah.
But let's not hijack this particular meeting today with this proponent, and let's put an end to it here and follow it up with something in terms of more public process. Agreed?
If I may, Your Worship, I feel that I need to clarify the situation with the warming center staying in place if we do not get the variance.
Excuse me, Mr. Kennedy, you may be digging a bigger hole for yourself.
Well-
I think you did say it, Miss Kennedy back there captured it and fed it back to the group very clearly. So you're going to have to live with that association that you made.
Yes,
If you let me
yes.
speak, I won't mention warming center.
Come on, you guys, I'm trying to get a hold of this.
I just want to say that we have no other choice. If we don't get the variance, we can't run the business that was intended for that place.
We don't want it, though.
The
Okay.
bylaws are actually made up after the property was already purchased.
Right, we're getting into
And-
the debate of whether or not you're being forced into it from a business standpoint.
Absolutely.
Exactly, and Pamela, please, quick.
Okay, I won't bring up that place. But if we are going to go ahead, I want to say something other than that place. But if we're going to go ahead and get everyone else involved on this discussion, which I think the community still needs to be heard, please, I would love that. But I was handed a letter by the city officials or city workers, hand delivered to my house. I thought that was wonderful. I was part of something finally. And then I find out this morning at 5:30 this morning that there was a public hearing. I had no idea. So can we actually advertise that a little bit better? That we are having a public hearing?
In terms of the handout of the letter.
It was not written on my piece of paper at all. It had only guidelines as to when the closure of written documentation could be
Okay,
handed in.
I'll certainly take this back to staff in terms of tightening up that
The
process.
community still needs
Thank
to
you
be
very
heard.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call this public hearing to a close, but I can tell you that my intention is to discuss with staff the need for another public forum to talk about your issues, the ones that you brought up today.
Could we have it in the evening so
Yes.
people can show
Everybody.
up?
Okay, exactly,
Yes.
somewhere that's more convenient, and
Yes,
obviously a
in
bigger
a bigger
setting.
area.
A bigger setting than this
Like
council
the,
chamber.
like the auditorium in the high